The Birdie Board podcast is brought to you by the Birdie Board app, the easiest way to track matches, scores, and handicaps with friends. Now, here's your host, Corey, with another episode of the Birdie Board podcast.
Welcome back to the 11th episode of the Birdie Board podcast. So the last episode, we had a great interview with a golf creator, a golf product creator. His name was, I'm blanking on his name now. First name Steve, but the product was called PathPal Golf. I really enjoyed the episode personally because honestly, a lot of golf training aids I kind of am suspicious of. They just seem cheap. They seem like people trying to make a quick buck. But I reached out to Steve to interview him on the podcast because I was just interested in learning about what the journey is to get a golf product from idea to selling. This is just kind of now speaking without Steve on the call. It wasn't even an endorsement or anything. Birdie Board received no money to have him on the podcast. It was just an interesting story to hear. So if you haven't heard that yet, listen to episode 10. It's on there. It's really cool to hear. My favorite part was just learning about how he got a product into manufacturing, but that's just my engineering background and how that interests me. But for this podcast, we're going to pivot just a little bit and talk about a broad topic, which I think is a good refresher for winter golf, which is just the rules of golf. I have a book here I got off of Amazon. It's called the Golf Rules Quick Reference. It's made by Expert Golf, and it's just a little book here. I would say it's about the size of my hand, fits in my golf bag, has nice durable pages, a nice plastic cover, and what it has in it is just a reference for golf rules. So if you're like me, playing golf according to the rules is really important. So I like to think that anyone listening to this podcast is just like a casual weekend golfer, maybe a little bit more serious than that, but I'm definitely not trying to cater to the most serious of the serious golfers. But what playing by the rules does is when you share your score, good or for bad, you can have a lot of confidence in whether or not you can share that genuinely. And it also really helps you track how you're improving. So regardless of how serious you take golf, I highly encourage you to follow the rules the best you can, just because that's how you can really track your real progress, and that's how you can have fun with friends, like using different game modes and stuff on Birdie Board to be able to truly track and have fun and play competitively. If you don't know the rules, that's okay. There's a lot of them, and it's complicated at times, and that's why I carry around this reference book just so that I can quickly look down and learn. For me personally, I actually joined a golf league at one point in my life. I probably only did like 4 matches in it. I wasn't very consistent in it. But I will say being in the league and playing with really, honestly, over serious golfers helped me learn the rules really well. And it has helped me share the knowledge with my friends when they're having questions and stuff about how to handle things like different stakes and all that. So I'm going to go through the rules. I don't think this is going to be a boring podcast by any means. I hope not. But I do have my rule book in front of me, and I'm going to kind of take it section by section. Now, before you shut off the podcast, I'm not going to go over like every single golf rule there is, but I am going to go over some of the key ones in this podcast and probably more podcasts after this. So the focus of this podcast is just the basics of golf rules, but also some specifics about how you can do drops. So the first thing is there's tons of different ways to play golf. And sometimes those golf rounds have different rules. It's from the scoring perspective, but also sometimes how you do the game of golf while you're playing. I'll try to point out some of those differences as I'm going along, but the scoring can easily be managed by, I hope you choose like Birdie Board to help you, but even if you don't choose Birdie Board, there's other apps out there that can really help you manage the scoring aspect of different ways to play golf. But generally, these rules are just rules that can apply to no matter what golf game you're playing, but I'll try to be specific if there's some nuance to these rules that might be different based off of the type of golf you're playing, whether it's stroke play, match play, handicaps or not, things like that. So the first thing is holing out and conceding. So holing out is just your basic concept of golf. Once you tee off, the ball needs to go into the hole. You cannot concede a hole under normal circumstances in regular stroke play. So what that means is in regular stroke play, there is not a max limit to how many strokes it takes to get into the hole. That's kind of a gray area for a casual golfer. A lot of people play like double or 1 over double bogey, so they always pick up at +3. Maybe they pick up a double par. Maybe they pick up double par +1. It depends. I would say there is a trade-off there because especially for a casual golfer like us, pace of play is really important. So you don't want to just always play to the maximum strokes until the ball goes in, because you might be on a par 3 for 30 minutes if you're doing that, if you're really getting stuck in a bunker or getting frustrated or something like that. But I would recommend choosing a number that is relative to your golf game. So, for example, for me, I like to play double par is when I pick up. A normal score for me might be like a bogey on a hole. I'll definitely get double bogeys. Maybe once a round or something, I'll get a triple bogey. But the really rare scores for me is double pars. Be really, really honest with yourself. If you're finding yourself picking up more than once every couple rounds due to a big score, I think you might need to raise that cap up and just work on the pace of play. So it's really not, it's really a rule you should follow because it helps you get that accurate score, but balance it with a good pace of play because we don't want you guys sitting on a par 3 for way too long. So keep those in mind. There are certain game modes that allow you to concede. For example, if you are playing Stableford and you know your opponent has already gotten more points than you could get, you may be able to concede the hole without holing out. Same with match play. If the person you're playing has already beaten you on that hole, there's no reason for you to finish. However, I encourage you to finish in match play if pace of play allows, just for the practice of finishing out. But generally, conceding just isn't allowed in normal stroke play. So keep that in mind if you're trying to play a normal round and trying to follow the rules. So again, like conceding is picking up if you've scored too high on a certain hole. Conceding isn't just saying, hey, opponent, I'm giving up this hole. Like it's once you hit a certain stroke limit or something like that, that's conceding. Under normal rules of golf, there's not much that allows that. However, I would recommend for pace of play choosing a number that's relative to your handicap that may work for you. All right, let's move on to the next one, which is substituting the ball. So between holes, you are allowed to change the ball out, but while you're playing, you're not allowed to change the ball out unless if you've lost the ball or the ball has significant damage. As casual golfers, I would say if you notice your ball has any sort of damage, just replace it out. It's not a big deal. But in competitive play, you would probably need like a rules official to agree with you that your ball has some sort of significant damage. I'm thinking like it really hit a rock hard, has a big gash in it, something like that. And that would require you to take or replace the ball. Now, don't use this as an excuse to improve your lie. We'll get more to that later, but if you are going to replace your ball, make sure it's the exact same lie as it was before, and don't use it just as an excuse to get a better lie, because you're only hurting yourself in those situations, or you could be cheating if you're in an actual competition. If you do a unallowable substitution of your golf ball, that's just going to be a 1-stroke penalty for you on your scorecard. Especially if you don't improve your lie in any ways, that's probably the worst case scenario. And I'm kind of looking at my little book here. I think there was one more nuance to this rule that I wanted to share. I think that's about it. So let's move on to the next one, is playing the ball as it lies, like I just talked about. So the basic rule of golf says that wherever your ball ends up, that's where you have to hit it from next. You can't improve it at all. If it's plugged in a bunker or something like that, that's the unfortunate part of golf, but that's really the cool, challenging part of golf as well. And you see that a lot at the pro level. That's why the pro, like the best of the best, don't win every single round, is because sometimes things just don't go their way. Like, the winners of a golf tournament could be separated by a single stroke. And that single stroke could be the difference between a plugged golf ball or a unplugged golf ball. And that's just the beauty of golf in a way. It's a frustrating part of golf for sure, but it's also the beauty of golf. So here's a couple things you can remember with just the playing the ball as it lies. Is the most simple: you can't touch the ball between the tee and the green. Basic rule number one there. There's nothing else you need to think about. You just literally can't touch the ball between teeing it off and getting to the green. Playing the ball as it lies, so whatever the condition is of where the ball is laying on the ground, that's how you're going to play it. And then play the course as you find it. So you can't change the aspects of the course to improve your lie. For example, like fluffing up grass or something like that to be able to get a better shot through the ball. Not allowed to do that. That's changing your lie. A couple of the things you can do is like moving twigs out of your club path, moving rocks out of your club path. But if you watch pros, they're like picking these things like it's a delicate thing. And that's because a big factor of whether or not they're playing their ball as it lies is whether the ball moves as they're adjusting things around the ball. So the safest thing is to just don't get near the ball when you're adjusting things around the ball, moving twigs, things like that. And the simplest way you can understand this is just don't touch the ball until you get onto the green. And then on the green, you can obviously mark it and stuff like that. So it is practically impossible to do anything wrong in golf if you just follow this rule. It's a really simple one. It's something you guys can really take with you to play golf the right way. There is a couple things like if you're playing the ball as it lies in an area that the course marked as a no play zone. For example, if they have like a ground under repair and it's not like a red stick, they're actually trying to restore grass or something, and you play a ball from that, that would be violating the rules, stuff like that. Those are some nuances that you are usually posted on the scorecards of the course you're playing at, and something that will be made pretty obvious to you, usually by the superintendent at courses. They'll usually tell you, hey, on hole 13, there's some ground under repair about 200 yards out. You get a free drop, no close to the hole, stuff like that. So that's just, the basics of playing it as it lies. Let's see. So let's move on to the next one here. Club length. So you've probably heard before when you make a drop, you can drop up to a club length or sometimes 2 club lengths depending on the type of drop. The clubs, you can choose any club you want out of your bag except for your putter. So that's the rule around that. So dropping and redropping, let's talk about the actual mechanics of dropping the golf ball. So the actual mechanics is you have to drop the golf ball within the designated drop zone from your knee and no lower. Once you drop it, the ball has to land in the designated drop zone and stay in the designated drop zone. If you drop it from your knee and it lands in the zone and stays in the zone, you're good to go, you're ready to take your shot. If you drop it from your knee and it lands out of the drop zone but rolls back into it, that does not count as a valid drop. You have to pick it up and drop again. Vice versa, if it drops in the drop zone and then rolls out of the drop zone, you have to pick it up and drop it again. So if you don't have a successful first drop, you are permitted to drop it again. If the second drop is still not successful, i.e. it doesn't stay in the drop zone, then you are allowed to place it in the drop zone. where the ball was last dropped, and that's the key. So for that second drop, wherever it was dropped, you would then try to place it where it hit the ground within the drop zone. If it still doesn't stay there, then the last option is you're finding the nearest spot where the ball can stay. So you can think of like an approach, a scenario that might happen is if you're on a slope, then it might constantly be rolling out of the drop zone. So that's when you would place it at the nearest point where it wouldn't roll out. Let's see. And then I guess a couple other nuances with that is you can't go any closer to the hole with your drop. That's a pretty across the board type of rule with drops. You can just never go closer to the hole. And two things, you can either clean your ball that you're about to drop. Let's say it was like a red stake area and you found your ball in the red stake area. You can either clean it and just reuse the one you found, or you do have the opportunity to drop a new ball in this case without any penalty. All right, so let's say you had an incorrect drop and you actually ended up playing it. Well, a couple things could happen there depending on the scenario. So I'm just gonna keep going through these rules because I love these things. The first thing is if you play from the wrong spot, it is gonna be a 2-stroke penalty. It seems severe, but it could give a significant advantage, and that's just what it is. So if you end up dropping the ball, it rolls out of the drop zone, it is on a level lie, it's going to be a 2-stroke penalty. And again, these are all self-assessed. Like, you have to be honest with your own score, but when you get to the end of the round and you've assessed your penalties correctly, it's such a good feeling knowing, like, that is my score. Maybe it's 90, 95, 105. You can have so much pride that saying, okay, that's my score, and now I can actually go beat it, knowing the rules. Maybe you did have to assess yourself a 2-stroke penalty. Well, that's an easy way to change a score from 100 to a 98, even if you play the same way. So it's a really exciting thing once you know these rules and you're actually playing by them. There is a nuance here if you're playing in like a more professional tournament, that if the lie is improved significant enough, and I know that's subjective, but that's kind of based off the rule committee, it could result in disqualification. So, for example, I'm thinking like if you're dropping behind a tree and it rolls down and now you have a like nice clear view to the green, that's a pretty significant advantage from where it would have been if you dropped it. So keep that in mind if you're playing a more professional tournament, that it could result in disqualifications, but I think in most cases it would just be a 2-stroke penalty. Let's see. If you dropped it incorrectly, so let's say you dropped it from like below your knee or something like that, but it did land in the correct spot, that would only be a 1-stroke penalty. And then if you placed it instead of dropping it, that would be a 2-stroke penalty, assuming it's in the correct spot. All right, let's talk about the last one here is just suspension of play. So this is like what happens if the tournament or the round you're playing or just the weekend round is suspended for some reason. Suspended is like weather related, it's raining too much, thunderstorm, lightning, things like that. So there's a couple rules you guys can be familiar with around this. So if there was a signal, a warning signal that there might need to be a suspension of play, the rule says that you can, let's see, the actual rule says that you are allowed to finish the hole if it's just a warning saying like, okay, we expect suspension of play to happen in the next 30 minutes, finish up your hole and then call it a day for now. I don't think you see that super often anymore. Usually you just see like people playing as far as they can and then it's suspended. But there is a rule there that says they can issue a warning, you guys can finish the hole and then call it a day. If there is like a signal that says, hey, we need immediate suspension of play, imminent storm, lightning detected, things like that, you must stop play. It's usually a safety thing. I would encourage you to always listen to those rules. People have actually passed away because of lightning strikes on the golf course, things like that. It's just safer. Live to play another day. We are weekend golfers. It's not worth it to push the round or anything like that. So what you do is you can actually pick up your ball in these cases. So if it's like a rain delay or a lightning delay and you're on your regular course on the weekend, mark your ball. Take advantage of this rule. You can pick it up, you can clean it, you can make sure it's not damaged by hail or whatever's going to happen. Put a tee in the ground, make sure it's secure so you know where it's at, and then put the ball in your pocket. Don't lose it or anything like that. And then once the play resumes, you just put the ball, you can actually place it. It's not a drop. You place it exactly where it was before. And then you can complete the hole just like there was. All right. Another rule here, if there's a risk of lightning, you do not have to wait for it to be officially suspended. So I know a lot of courses, even public ones, will have like an air horn that they fire if there's lightning in the area. If you're suspicious or you see something, there's a rule that's protecting you, saying you're allowed to mark your ball and wait until you feel comfortable again. That's okay, and don't worry about pace of play in those cases because safety is very important. If players discontinue their round without a valid reason, then you will be disqualified from whatever you're playing. So in weekend golf, that doesn't really matter if it's rain. I've walked away, hole 12 because of a bad rainstorm before. Yeah, technically I followed this rule by disqualifying myself, but if you're playing an actual round and you just don't want to finish because of the rain or something like that, and maybe you said there was lightning and there wasn't, I don't know. There's probably reasons that it just wouldn't be valid for you to stop play and you would be disqualified. But that's not too important here. I think the important thing is if you're playing with other people and you feel like uncomfortable because of the lightning in the area or something like that, don't push it. Just suspend play there and call it a day. Your safety is more important. All right, so those were the golf rules that I wanted to go over today. I think it was an awesome podcast. It's a good refresher for myself, and I think it fits winter golf pretty well because it's just kind of setting a nice foundation of these golf rules. I mean, we've probably went through like 10 rules today, going over everything, and I think we got a really good base in. So anyways, that's it for this week's podcast. Thanks for listening.
Thanks for tuning in to the Birdie Board podcast. If you enjoyed it, subscribe and share it with a friend who loves golf as much as you do. And before your next round, grab the Birdie Board app, free on the Apple App Store and Google Play Store, and let it handle the scoring while you enjoy the game.